on, sorry for this typographical error, by checking for information on the topic at hand from credible websites. So when you're talking about credible websites are relative. So say credible websites are those directly related to the organizing body or the essay topic itself. So for instance, if you want to write an essay that is organized by a law, let's say a law firm or a law organization, or probably I think I've seen some essay competitions organized by Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan. So essay competitions like that you know they are directly related to law. While you are doing your research, you would want to get your facts and figures from websites that are directly related to law firms, law in general, and law school, all of that. And this doesn't necessarily mean that your references must come only like solely from law firms, but most of them should come from law firms because they are the ones that can outrightly state that this is the specific thing that obtains in with respect to writing the essay. So yeah, I said credible websites include the website of a law firm for topics related to law, for instance. Moving on, I said if you need some research articles, let's say you are doing, you want to write an essay, let's say an essay that is not conventional, like an essay that you need you need quality research for. So you need to use research articles. Let's say, for instance, you want to write an essay that is related to medicine, like a specific domain in medicine. You would have to get research articles on that topic. So to get research articles, you would want to use Google Scholar, because when you're using Google itself, it would give you, Google is a search engine and Google Scholar is also a search engine. But the difference is Google Scholar will direct you to educationally related stuff. Then Google itself is going to direct you to anything as long as it pertains to what you searched for. So it will just give you results based on keywords in your search. And sometimes it will give you references that are not credible. So Google Scholar is nice. You could get research articles on Google Scholar and you would use that for your reference. So I said here lastly that you should avoid Wikipedia like a plague. Most of the information you see on Wikipedia, they are uploaded by people like you and I. I just go to Wikipedia based off things that they've noticed, things that they have in mind, or let's say things according to their own personal experiences. They upload things on Wikipedia, and as such, those things can be questionable. So if you want to have a good, if you want to write, sorry, coming, please. I need to go back. Okay. Yes. So if you want to turn in a good essay, like an essay that is worthy of recommendation, that is worthy of winning, so to say, you need to avoid Wikipedia. So moving forward, I'm done with the aspect of researching. So referencing. Now, like I've already stated, you may not have idea about the topic of discourse, so you need to do research. Let's say, for instance, you want to write, in secondary school, or secondary school, let's just stick to secondary school. We used to write essays of 200 words, 300, 350, even up to 100 level when you do your general science courses.
Sorry, I'm interrupting. I just want to make an announcement. I understand that some people are actually unable to join the call. Some technical error came in, and I found that the limit for this Zoom is actually 100. So some people were unable to join. But then we've been able to create a YouTube link. We are streaming it live, and I'll drop the link on the group. So if you have friends that have been trying to join, I will drop the link on the chat box now so that you can copy to them. Thank you.
You could also drop the link in the WhatsApp groups. It would be easier for them to access it there. All right, so moving forward, I was saying you need to do research, and when you do your research, you would come across facts and figures, like hard facts and figures that you wouldn't have formulated by yourself, obviously. Yes, I remember what I was talking about. I said the old type of essay many of us used to know are those that are of minimal word counts, like 300 words, 450 words, even up to 100 level and 200 level, maybe. You write essays, they'll tell you write an essay of no more than 350 words, blah, blah, blah. But then most of these essay competitions have huge word counts. You have word counts ranging from 500. I think 500 is the least I've seen. 500, 1,000, 1,200, 1,500, 3,500. I've seen an essay of 5,000 word counts before. So it just depends on what the organizing body wants from you. And also, uh, so the acceptable thing is to cite the sources because you didn't get facts. So, like I said, you do research because your research has to be in the essay to ensure that the word count is complete, so to say. So, you need to cite these sources. So, this being said, make sure you take note of where you get your references from. Yes. So, this is a problem a lot of people face. And I passed through this issue as well. Because when you are doing your research, you do research and you get a plethora of information from different sources and all. Then you now streamline your information at the end of the day to start writing. So when you start writing, you'd most likely have forgotten where you got a certain reference from. And when you are done writing and you need to reference, you now spend another time to start searching for the references that you used in your essay, and that could delay you. That could even take a day or two from you when something you could have done in about 30 minutes. So while you are writing, when you get a particular site that you want to take information from, just copy the link, maybe paste it to your notepad, um, put a short description of what you copied from that link in the front so it could remind you when you want to do your referencing. So it would make your work easier and it will make you work faster. So importance of referencing, the major importance is to avoid plagiarism. So like I said initially, you have to cite sources that you get your detail, your facts from. So that way you're going to avoid plagiarism if you reference them, because if you don't reference them, all this information that you put in your essay would most likely be found online, and it will be assumed that you just copied something from somewhere and put in your essay and all. But when you cite them, you have given credence to them, sort of, and you have acknowledged the fact that I copied this information from this site and I'm using it here. But I've made mention that I copied this from this place, so I'm not to be taken as a criminal. So yeah, I said major importance of referencing is protection it gives you against plagiarism. I said plagiarism is a felony that could get you disqualified actually. So even if you turn in a very good essay, if you turn in a very good write up, when the organizing body or the judges uh, run your work through plagiarism check and they see that it is highly plagiarized, then they could disqualify you. So you need to take note of that. Uh, so to avoid plagiarism, you would have to do two things. First, you have to rephrase words that you get from your sources. So you don't have to put in the words that you get from your sources, hook, line, and sinker. You have to rephrase it somehow. Then when you do that, you'd also cite them. So you cite them in your work. So example, when you say the population of Nigeria is about 200 million, it's like a general information. It's like a general fact, a general knowledge. But then I'm very sorry for that. Uh, I thought I used this, but somehow it was bypassed. So yes, I said yes, I said almost everyone may know that uh, the population of Nigeria is 200 million, but then I didn't conduct that. I didn't conduct that census. You didn't conduct that
Hello, Patrick. We can't hear you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. And please, you have just about 5 minutes or 7 minutes more, please.
Yeah, I'll be done. I'll be done very soon. I'll be done very soon. I just need to fix up what is interfering with my meeting because someone is actually calling me. So I think that's been fixed. So continue. Sorry. Can everyone see my slide?
Yes.
All right. So I've talked about the importance of reference. Now we move to types of referencing and styles and their domains. So there are different types of referencing styles, and those reference styles are peculiar to specific domains. So you have examples here that I've listed MLA. So MLA is basically for the humanities. You have APA style, American Psychological Association, which I love so much. Its domains are psychology, education, and social sciences. Then you have OSCOLA, is for law. Vancouver is for medicine. Harvard is for economics. Then you have several others. This list is not exhaustive. So you have several authors, but like I said, I prefer using APA style because it can function in almost all kinds of essays. So if you're writing a law related essay now, you most likely want to use OSCOLA. If you're writing for medicine, you want to use Vancouver, and so on. You want to use Vancouver, and so on. So APA style, sorry. Bear in mind that the manner of referencing are different for different sources are different. Yes, like the manner of referencing different sources are peculiar to one another. So the way you reference a magazine is different from the way you reference a newspaper publication. And the way you reference a newspaper publication is different from the way you reference an article. It's different from the way you reference information gotten from a website and all. So you would need to go through online resources on how to reference different types of sources using a particular referencing style. So if it's APA style you want to use, you just go online, you search how do I reference in APA style. Sorry about that. So you'd check information on how to reference in APA style. Let's say you have information from websites, you'd check online, how do I reference a website using APA style? So this is an example of a format, and this is information gotten from a website, like a website entry, so to say. So you have the name of the author. So when you're writing the name of the author, you write only the surname, then it will be followed by the initials. So you have a full stop, date of publication in brackets, the title of the publication, then the publisher will be in italics, then retrieved from, you put the link that you got the reference from. So I give an example here. You have Anago A. So Anago is the surname, A is the first name. Then the information or the write-up was published on 17th January 2020, and it was the title of the publication was NIMASA, Tackling Marine Pollution, Piracy for Safe Shipping on Nigerian Waters. Then this was actually a newspaper publication, but an online newspaper publication. So I think I stated somewhere up there that you can get your, yes. So for newspaper publication, it can be either online or offline. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of us that haven't touched newspapers in some years now. So you most likely use the online version of the newspapers. So you put the link that you got it from and all. So that's pretty much it about researching and referencing. So I would love to have your questions now.
All right. Thank you very much, Patrick, for that presentation. I think referencing is actually a very important part of the essay, and usually it has marks that are actually allocated to it. But I feel like there is a trick that I know that you can use in copying the referencing style directly, but then maybe that is a topic for another day. So we have a question here. Someone is saying, Mr. Patrick, can you give us an example of how you made references in any of your write-up in a fresh slide? I think you already did that. Then one person is asking if one doesn't reference in APA style, is there an implication? I think you want to answer that, Patrick.
Yes. I just said now that the only referencing style that we have is not APA. APA is not the only referencing style that we have. But like I said, APA is what I usually go to. It's just my preferred choice. And I gave other examples. And I said specifically that if you want to write for specific domains, let's say you want to write for medicine, you'd use Vancouver style. It's not like you may not be penalized for using another style for another reference, another work, but it would most likely give you an edge over other people when the judges are going through the works. So it's just better for you to use specific referencing styles that are directly related to specific essay competitions and organizing bodies. So APA style can be used for most of these essay competitions that you see online because they are directly related to education. So that's why I kind of love APA style.
All right. Let me check if there are still questions. Someone is asking, is it advisable to paraphrase a quote?
No, it's not advisable to paraphrase a quote. When you are making a quote, when you are putting a quote in your essay, you state the quote as it is. State the quote exactly as it is, because when you paraphrase it, or when you touch it at all in that light, you have already how do I put it? You have already changed the concept of the quote itself. So it wouldn't be ascribed to the person that said it anymore because you have touched it in a way.
All right, thank you very much. Someone is asking, by referencing type, do you mean that a topic will be based on a particular field which has its own referencing style?
I don't quite get that question.
Let me check that again. He's asking, by the referencing style that you mentioned, do you mean that the topic will be based on a particular field which has its own referencing style?
Yeah, some of the topics will be based on some fields.
Well, I think what the person is asking is the topic going to be tied to a specific field or something?
Yeah, sometimes it will. Sometimes it will, and you get that cue from the body that is organizing the essay competition. Yes, there's this essay competition by Ife School of Medicine. One essay organized by, I think, is Olukoyera and some Kuti Memorial essay competition like that. So it's directly related to medicine. So when you see that, you know, okay, in this particular essay, I'm going to reference in Vancouver style. But then it's the research that matters. When you do your research, the referencing is just an icing on the cake. It's not something that you should stress yourself over, because you could have good referencing and you have something not so good in your write-up, in the body of your essay. So you just have to make sure you get.
We are going beyond the time. I know someone is asking, can we have your slide? I believe we should be able to have that.
Yes,
then another person definitely is asking, thank you, sir, for this session. Is it necessary to use in-text referencing for, let's say, articles? Any other question will be answered on the group, please.
Can I answer the last question, please?
Yes, please.
All right. Using in-text referencing, I forgot to mention something that when you want to reference using Word, you most likely want to use your endnotes referencing style. So when you're using in-text referencing, like in-text citations, for example, that example that I gave in APA style, while you're writing, maybe when you get to the point that you got information from, you would want to put the surname of the person and the year of the publication. But I personally feel that is going to put pause in the minds of the judges. So it's better for you to just use endnote reference where you have superscript numbers. So at the end of your essay, you have the list of the references. And also, I think I've been able to answer that question.
All right. Thank you very much. So before we actually move to the next person, I understand that some people have actually been able to join us on YouTube, and I believe they should be able to hear these announcements. At the end of this session, we plan to issue a certificate, and the certificate will basically be for people that are participating. So we have an evaluation form in which we want to know what you actually learned from this, if we met up with your expectation for this training session, and what you'd like us to do better. So in the course of this training, after the third presentation by Onyeko Molafe, I will be dropping the link, and the link will actually close 10 minutes after the fourth person has made his presentation. So, and it's only those that actually make that submit the form that would get certificate from us. So thank you. Without wasting our time, I would like to call on our third presenter, speaker for the night, Onyeko Molafe. I think getting her on board, let me share an interesting story because I've always heard that name about when it comes to essay writing. Onyeko Molafe is one name that you have come to just have to respect because she has earned it. She has earned it different organization essays organized by different organizations. So when I was putting together the facilitators for this training, I reached out to her, and getting some of these facilitators on a meeting was quite hard, but then we were still able to find alternatives to ensure that we are here. So for the first time, I will also be hearing her voice live, like you will also be hearing her. And let me just take you through some of the things that she has been able to do. Onyeko Molafe is a fourth year law student at University of Ibadan. Her interests cut across energy law and public policy. She's an avid reader and outstanding researcher. Oyin is a recipient of numerous essay competition awards. Last year, she emerged as the overall winner of the World Intellectual Property Organization WIPO essay competition. Similarly, in the same year, she emerged as the first runner of the Manufacturer Association of Nigeria MAN essay competition. She also recently emerged as the overall winner of the Moyo Onigbanjo essay competition. In 2020, she was the overall winner of the Legal Pages essay competition. Oyin has achieved this feat while maintaining a first-class grade in all her sessions. In her spare time, she enjoys watching movies and hanging out with a few friends. I believe we are one of our friends that should be hanging out with this evening. So, let's have it, please.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Can we all hear me?
Yes, good evening. You can.
Okay, so very glad to be here, and I'm happy that some people are hearing my voice for the first time. Okay, so I'm supposed to take the part on structure, but when I was thinking about what to say, I decided to make my part broader than that. So I would talk about tackling the topic, an essay topic. I would also talk about structure. Then I would touch a little bit on content because I think I wasn't here when Patrick, I think it was Patrick, did the last session, but I think he did something on research. And I would assume that he talked a bit about content. So I'll just be giving a few tips on that subheading. Okay, so first things first, tackling an essay topic. When you get an essay topic, what happens? What do you do? I think that for many people now, when you see essay competitions, essay organizers have already transcended the phase of having to give you an essay that is a topic rather that is so straightforward. And then when you see it, you're just like, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what they want, and all of that. So, maybe about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you often see topics like how do we tackle corruption in Nigeria? How do we promote education and all of that? But now topics have started to integrate more nuances such that you have to think very deeply before you start writing your essay. And that's why I often say that the process of tackling a topic is a very major process in your essay writing, the whole essay writing process. And to be able to deduce what a topic requires can often be difficult, because sometimes you will see that an organizer would just put a major topic and then a subtopic together, and they would expect you to write an essay on it, even if the major topic and the subtopics don't necessarily have a correlation, at least on the surface level. So many times it's like you're trying to solve a puzzle rather, you're trying to piece your puzzle together. And to be able to figure out that stage, I would advise that you read first, because if you see a topic and what the topic requires doesn't necessarily come to you immediately, it just means that there is something that you're probably missing. I'll give you an example. Last year, I worked on an essay competition and a presentation with my partner, and whilst we were doing it, we had a topic at the presentation. We had already written the essay and we had qualified, so we had to do the presentation. So we got a topic. It was on tax administration and data privacy in Nigeria. And when we saw the topic, I remember very well, whilst we were working together and we saw the topic, we just did not understand exactly what they wanted. And we were working with a very tight deadline. I think it was 2 days before the presentation. So we really did not know what correlation existed between tax administration and data protection. And what we did was we started to read. And when we started to read, we started to see some things that were not so obvious to us when we saw the topic with just plain eyes and on the surface level. So what we did was, when we read on it, we decided to talk about the tiers of tax administration in Nigeria. We talked about how tax authorities often process large volumes of data because of the amount of taxpayers we have in Nigeria. Then we talked about the problems of the data privacy regime within the context of tax administration. Then we provided solutions to the problems we had identified. So it was that simple. That's what I'm saying. First of all, for you to be able to tackle a topic now with the topics we have with essay competitions currently, you would have to read. So it's the reading that really sets you on the path of clarity many times. Now, moving on to the next one, which is, of course, structure, the thing I'm supposed to talk about ordinarily today. I decided to start tackling the topic because I genuinely believe that your ability to tackle the topic or realize what the topic entails is really what informs your structure. So it's like the clarity on the topic is what flows into the structure. And when you gain clarity on the topic and you decide that, okay, this is what the essay entails, and this is what I want to incorporate in my essay, that is when you now decide that you want to carve out a structure. And very importantly, please don't start writing an essay before you have a structure. Because even before you start to research, your structure should already be in place. That's what I'm saying. The reading that you would do first before you start your essay or before you tackle the topic is really just a preamble to the main essay process. Because you still have to do your research after you carve your structure. But that reading, that pre-reading that you do is just for you to be able to have an idea of what your essay would entail. And that's how you form your structure. So when you form your structure, you will start to research, because your structure would inform your research. Obviously, if you just start to research off the top of your head, you're going to be lost in many things. And most probably, you're not going to write a winning essay. So after getting clarity on the topic, carve out a structure. And I think Patrick already said that in the last session. Many times, organizers will give you a word count. I think the most popular, the most common is the 1,500 word count, but many times you have 2,000, 2,500, and the likes. When you pick a structure, always keep in mind that you want to pick a structure that optimizes your word count. So always have your word count in mind when you pick a structure, because I've noticed that when people write essays, they tend to get lost in the moment or in the point, so to say, such that they fixate on the irrelevancies. So for sometimes a point that you can ordinarily say in like 2 lines, you will now make a whole paragraph on it. That's not very advisable. And when you see a winning essay, or maybe when you write an essay for an essay competition and then you don't win, and you see the winning essay and you're like, but I wrote everything, or what was so special about this essay? A winning essay is all about strategic writing. And the strategy, of course, is like content and your structure. I wish try as much as possible to keep in mind that you want to write everything within the restricted word count that you have. Yeah. So carve up, because sometimes you have a 5K word count, of course, that kind of word count will give you the leeway to just write many things that might not necessarily be relevant to the topic. But we have 1K5. You have to think very deeply about what you want to say and weigh the relevance of many of your paragraphs. So I'll give you an example. Last year, when I was writing for the WIPO essay competition, it was 1,500 words, and the topic was intellectual property, SMEs, and economic recovery in Nigeria. And I think I spent about 2 days deciding on what structure I wanted to go with. And when I finally decided on a structure, I settled with the first part, introduction, second part, intellectual property, repositioning Nigerian SMEs for economic prosperity. The third part, I talked about the challenges hindering intellectual property protection by Nigerian SMEs. And then the last part, I preferred solutions to the challenges I had identified. Now, I knew from the start, when I carved the structure and when I started doing my research, that the structure was solid enough to push an excellent essay, and it worked, because in that structure that I had covered all the important parts, and I had already taken into consideration the word count. And I think that because when I read some other essays that were not necessarily winning essays for the same competition, I discovered that many of them wasted a lot of time talking about a specific subtopic that could have just been compressed into a few lines. So when they did that, it really just compromised their ability to talk about other important things. Yeah. So when you have a restricted word count, please keep in mind that your structure must also reflect that. Now, moving on to the next part, which I will just talk about very briefly. I think my time is fast spent, not so sure. Now moving on to content.
You can continue. I think this is actually like a very important part of the training, so you can take your time.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you very much. Now moving on to the content. I know I've talked about structure, I've talked about tackling the topic and all of that. But of course, the content is the most important part of the essay. And I know that Patrick would have talked about the research. I mean, of course, your research would drive your content. But when you're laying out your content, there are some things you should keep in mind. First is that you need to master the art of proper paragraphing. Your paragraphs must always flow into one another. And that's because the way you present your essay is very important. If at every point in time, put yourself in the shoes of a judge. you look at your essay, whether you're proofreading or you're writing, think, if I were a judge, would I like this? If I were a judge, would I find this appealing? Would I find this, I don't know, excellent or something? Because when you write an essay and then your paragraphs are unnecessarily long, or your work looks very jumbled up and very clustered, it just gives off the impression that you're not very, you don't have an excellent character, you're not very, and maybe you rushed your work, or you didn't really care enough to make your work presentable. That's why it's very important, because you might have an excellent body of work, but then the judge that should read your essay would not necessarily be so motivated to see what you have to say. That's why at every point in time, when you know when you're confident about your content, try as much as possible to make your essay presentable, because that's what will give you a fighting chance, really. Many judges are reading all the hundreds of entries many times, and they really cannot afford to fixate on your own, or to just maybe give you a chance, even if your work is rough. That's really not how it works most times. And the second is, simplicity is very important. Please do not, under any circumstance, use unnecessary big words, like words that would not, if the meaning would not come to you immediately you see it, words that the judges would have to be consulting a dictionary for. It's very unnecessary. And if anything, it doesn't even add to your work. It just makes the judge, turned off and stuff. Because, like I said earlier, judges are dealing with a lot of entries. Why do they have to pick up a dictionary to check words just because of your own entry? I mean, you're definitely not that special. Honestly, you are not. So at every point, when you write an essay, prioritize simplicity over maybe trying to look obscure, or trying to create the impression that you're very smart, and you're an academic and stuff. That's judges really really care about that, especially when you're not writing a technical essay. Because, well, I will get to that. But basically, for this part of it, try as much as possible to pick simple words over words that are not necessarily comprehensible. And the next is, always make sure that your essay reflects clarity of thought. And I say this because many times people have great ideas, but they just don't know how to write about the ideas in a way that many people will be able to understand. And that's a problem, especially when you're writing a technical essay. Because nowadays you will see that some essays, they are for law students, or some essays are for medical students. And, well, of course, when you write a kind of essay, you have to cross the line of technicality. Yeah, and definitely the judge that would read your essay would also be versed in that area. So it may not necessarily be a problem. But even if you're writing a technical essay, try as much as possible to make sure that you're writing in a way that any person that picks your work and has a moderate knowledge of whatever you're talking about to be able to grasp your point. Because your points can quickly get lost on a person, especially when the person has been reading many entries already, and the person is reading the paragraph, but the person is just not getting what you're saying. Really, the person would give up, because, I mean, you really can't hold anybody to the fact that, oh, you should have given me a fighting chance, or you should have just read more. Maybe you would have understood it. When they read your paragraph, they should be able to get it immediately. And also, I'm not sure, because I wasn't here for the previous parts, but try as much as possible to have points that will make you stand out. Think very well, think widely, and think about that ways that you can write your essay, and the judge will just be wowed. That is really what captures the attention of any judge, really. To think about the specific points. As I say, I really feel that every essay should have, like, the point that stands out, the point that stands you out from other entries. It doesn't have to be like every point that you have would be so different and all, because, I mean, many essays, the points are very straightforward. But even if you don't have a different point, so to say, try to write your essay in a way that would just stand you out. Basically, because I'll give you an example. There was a time in sorry, in 2020 when I wrote legal pages. I can't remember the topic now. I think it was something on global emergencies. That was when coronavirus was the trend, and the the topic was something about laws can how laws can something in global emergencies. I can't really remember the exact topic, but I remember that when I was about to write the essay, I knew that there were many other essay competitions that organizers had already released that had a semblance of that topic. So I sort of knew that many people were going to repeat points. I mean, it was a no-brainer, and they did. But what I did for that essay was that I decided to not repeat the obvious points. And I started to research. I remember very well that even before I started writing the essay, it was so close to the deadline because I was researching a lot. And it paid off because my points were so different and so thought provoking in such a way that when you would juxtapose my own entry, and I mean, of course, this I'm saying this in the most humble way ever. When you would juxtapose my own entry with the others, you would see a difference. Because I mean, for essays where the points are very obvious, the only thing that distinguishes the entries is the way you write it. But the way I planned my own strategy was to create points and to relate points that were so different that the judges would just be like, no, this is the winner. Yeah, and the winning would be so obvious. That was what I did, and it paid off. So many times, like I said, it's strategic writing. Make your points very strategic. Think deeply. Think beyond the surface level. That's what really drives your content most times, and that's what makes your essay a winning essay. I think that's about it. Yeah, and then of course it's a no-brainer. Please refrain from grammatical errors. I know it's pretty difficult to have a an entry that is 100% devoid of grammatical errors, but just try and proofread time and time again. Because of course, you don't know what kind of judge you have, and many times judges can be put off by grammatical errors. I think that that's about it for my part, and I'll be looking forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, for that detailed presentation. I think you opened our eyes to a lot of things that most of us actually neglect, and I want to appreciate you for that. So, let me say, for those that are actually watching on YouTube, you can drop your questions on the WhatsApp group. I already have someone there that will check, and we'll be able to ask those questions. And those that are on Zoom, kindly send your questions via the chat box, and I will be reading them. Ty was asking, how long does an essay take you to write, from the start of the process to the end, or on an average?
Um, I It depends on the kind of essay you're writing and the level of technicality. I think that I have written an essay in 2 weeks. I think I wrote legal pages in 2 weeks. For the WIPO essay competition, I wrote that in about 3 weeks also. So I think an average of 2 weeks is fine. But I mean, it depends on the word count as well. I remember when I wrote Man was 5,000 words, and I had to spend about a month. I remember even writing the latter parts of the essay right before I did my exam was criminal law the day before. So I had to spend like a month on the essay. So, but on average, so 2 weeks for a word count of about 1,000 to 1,500 words. Yes.
All right, thank you. Deji's asking, how do one write a good essay introduction?
Um, the thing is that there is really no rule to introductions. And I was going to talk about this, but I didn't want to dwell too much on the content. But I think that some people have the misconception that when you want to write an introduction that is catchy, you should write a story, or you should tell a story or something that maybe happened or maybe something that did not happen. But I think that it is a very dangerous line to tread on because many people do not know how to tell stories. And often, when you're writing a serious essay, I do not think that a story will be suitable. So, when you're writing an introduction, just think about something that is a preamble to what you want to say. Yeah. For example, you're talking about how laws would help during um, pandemics. So you're just giving an introduction and you're talking about how pandemics are not new. We recently had an outbreak of a pandemic in 2020, da 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 da. That is what would flow into your main topic. So, and also, it's usually advisable to give sort of a summary of what you will talk about in the essay in your introduction. That's really about like 2, 3 lines. So when you talk about that preamble, of course, the major subject matter, then you talk about how then flowing from it or based on this backdrop, this essay seeks to analyze da, and then you go on to your next topic. So yes.
All right, thank you very much. I will be. I think we have a number of questions. If I cannot take everybody now, we would have to send the questions to you, and you can answer it on the WhatsApp group. But then I can still take a couple of questions. Ray is asking, is it best to include the referencing in the word count when it isn't clearly stated that the word count exclude referencing? Then the
You know,
special question,
can you
can the
repeat
winning
it?
essay be made? The person is asking, is it okay for one to include the referencing in the word count when it is not
No,
stated?
no. The referencing, the well, it depends though. It depends on what kind of referencing, what mode of referencing you're using. If you're using footnotes or you're using the bibliography, but even if you're going to be using that, it's the references are rarely incorporated into the word count. I mean, because if you're referencing and then you add it to the word count, that's going to take the bulk of your word count, and your content is really just one tree. So I
Okay,
don't think there's any essay competition that would count the references with the word count. That is very, very rare.
okay.
So,
He's also asking, can the winning essay be made available for us to study? Your essays.
oh yeah, sure, no problem.
Okay. This person is asking, do you advise the use of software like Grammarly? I think we have someone that will be talking about proofreading, so I'll skip that question.
Yeah.
Another person is asking, can you give an example on how to link introduction with the main topic and also how to end an essay?
Um. Okay. I think. Just give me a second. I think I would have some of my entries here. Not so sure. Uh. Yeah. I don't think I have any on my laptop here, but let me try and remember what I think. Okay.
Would you like to answer the questions via a voice note on WhatsApp that we can share?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. No problem.
Okay, please, before you do that, Deborah, please, you can help me to note the questions that have not been answered. I will take this last question. Someone sent this. One of those people watching on YouTube is asking, I would like to ask Onyi how one derives a structure for a topic that appears trivial difficult. For instance, if you are writing on a topic that is relatively new or abstract, do you also need to research on how to structure the topic?
Um. Yes, you do. Um, and I would say this just so everybody would know the fact that you're writing on something that you don't know about or something that is so new doesn't mean that you cannot write a winning essay or that you cannot win the essay. For example, when I wrote WIPO last year, I did not know anything about intellectual property. I was not even in the IPTLC club in my faculty. So I really did not know anything But and that's the thing. When you're writing essays like that, you don't need to have a foundational knowledge, so to say. The topic, the way they carve the topics, they are just topics that you can just read about. And when you think very deeply, that they are mostly they're dependent on your brain power as opposed to some sort of fundamental knowledge. Because you would realize that if you write a good essay, you can even um top the other people that are supposedly experts in the area. So what you need to do is focus on the topic. Take away the fact that you don't know anything about the area, because really that really matters. Focus on the topic. Try as much as possible to be critical in your thinking. Yeah. And when you write your essay, think about it and question yourself. Ask yourself if you honestly feel it's an excellent essay. And you can even send your essay to other people, although I generally do not do that. I don't subscribe to it, but you can also try sending your essay to other people. That can also give you an opinion. And you can send those essays to people that you feel are experts in the area. For example, you're writing an IP and then you have people in IPTLC, and you can just send your essay to them for them to be able to gauge whether you're writing something that makes sense or not. So it's really not a problem when you have a relatively new area to write on.
All right. Thank you very much, Funyi, for that detailed answer to the question. Every other question, please, it will be sent to you, and you can send a voice note that we can share on the various WhatsApp platforms. An announcement before we go into the next session. Like I announced earlier, that we'll have an evaluation form, and we'll be using that in collecting details for the certificate that we'll be issuing. The link has already been dropped in the chat box, and I will be dropping it on the WhatsApp group for those watching on YouTube. Please go through it. The link will be closed by 9:10 p.m. Please try and attend to that. So without much ado, I will be calling on the last presenter for the night, but surely not the least. He's also a colleague, Inioluwa. He's a 400 level medical student and a multiple award winning essayist. He's a writer, and he also enjoys discussing peculiar problems related to African continent and providing a solution to them. In a bid to contribute to the rejuvenation of African vision for development, he was the winner of the 2019 NIMASA World Maritime National Essay Competition. He was also the winner of the Continental Agenda 2063, the Africa Wants Essay Competition, and 2020 Excellent Minds Initiative National Essay Competition. He was also the first runner-up in the 2020 Olikoye Ransom Kuti Essay Competition, second runner-up in the 2019 Higher Education Foundation Essay, and fourth runner-up in the 2020 Policy Roundtable Essay Competition, among others. He is also passionate about creating policy changes that will positively impact the healthcare delivery system in Nigeria. His hobbies include playing video games and listening to music. I think Inioluwa is another amazing person that we are going to really enjoy today, and I'm looking forward to his presentation. Ini, please, you can start.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And I will say that all the facilitators who have gone ahead of me have really done a very great job discussing a lot of things about essay writing. And I would like for us to make sure that we take all these lessons into consideration, because they are very, very important. And I'd like to say thank you to them for doing a very, very good job. And so this evening we'll be discussing editing and proofreading. And I know these terms are things that we might have seen a couple of times, and many people often use them interchangeably, but they are actually different terms. And so we'll be discussing editing and proofreading and why they are important, and the things to look out for in essays, because when you don't edit your document properly, when you don't proofread your document properly, it simply means you are submitting a document that is below par, and it reduces your chances of winning, because many a times what makes the difference between those who win and those who don't are just very, very subtle things. So you must try as much as possible to make sure that all these things you pay attention to them. And so we'll begin with the definition of what proofreading and editing is. Um, Proofreading simply means checking your work to identify surface errors in spelling and punctuation, um, grammar, and other language mistakes, and also trying to pick up any instance of inconsistencies in terminology, formatting, and referencing. So when you are proofreading your work, you are trying to make sure that you pick out any errors in spelling, any errors in punctuation, any errors in grammar, any other mistakes that might be in your piece. So it's just like a surface check. When you are editing a piece, on the other hand, you are trying to see to the overall quality of the work, such that you want to make sure that, okay, this essay I've written actually communicates my ideas in the best possible way to the audience. You are trying to make sure that, okay, what I have written down, am I able to pass across the message in a way that is easy to understand for all levels of readers? So that's the difference between proofreading and editing. When you're editing an essay, you are trying to make sure that you get across your message to the audience as clearly as possible, while proofreading makes sure that your document is mechanically accurate. So now, something I'd like to briefly touch on before I go into the meat of editing and proofreading. Revising your essay. I know for a lot of first-time writers, they think that when what you think and write first is good enough, and then you can submit. So this often happens when people do not give enough time to their essays. So probably an essay is supposed to close in 2 weeks' time, and then you wait till 3 days to the deadline, and you just write something. And you're like, oh, this first draft is good enough, and then you submit it like that. But most times that first draft is inadequate. So the best thing to do is that you start early, and then you take some time off your essay. You come back to your essay with a fresh perspective, because when you write for the first time, you often write some things that do not pertain to the work. You write things that are not correct. You use some wrong expressions and things like that. But when you come back to the essay later on, it gives you like a fresh perspective, and you have there'll be an eye opening that, oh, these are the mistakes I made. These are the things I'm supposed to include that I did not include, and so on and so forth. So the best thing to do is to start early, so that you don't have to rush, and you can present a very, very good piece. So now, to proofreading. So I'll be talking about different things in proofreading. We're talking about grammar, talking about spelling, talking about punctuation, and formatting and instructions. So now for grammar, these are some basic things that you must do. Now, as a writer, you must have a very good control of your vocabulary and also use good grammar. So for instance, when you are writing, you should use proper tenses. You know, it would be so sad for you to be writing a story in your piece as an introduction, and you are writing your story in present tense. If the judge will be turned off immediately that this person is just doing an introduction, writing a story, and writing the story in present tense. So using proper tenses is non-negotiable. And the subject-verb agreement is very important. To use a singular subject, use a singular verb, use a plural subject, use a plural verb. These are the basics that you must not miss. These are things that you must not make mistakes. You must not make mistakes on when you are writing your essay. And then use a variety of sentence types. You should make sure that you use a flexible combination of simple, compound, and complex sentences. So you don't just keep writing with simple sentences, or you don't just keep writing with compound sentences, or you don't just keep writing with complex sentences. You need to make sure that you vary what kind of sentences you use, such that your work is much more pleasant to read. So let's look at this example I gave here. On January 28, 1986, the USA launched the Challenger space shuttle. The shuttle was headed for space. It carried a communication satellite which was meant to be deployed in space. The crew was made of different people from all walks of life. There were teachers, engineers, doctors, and Air Force pilots. Now, the second one says on January 28, 1986, the USA launched the Challenger space shuttle. The shuttle was headed for space and carried a communication satellite which was meant to be deployed there. The crew was made of different people from all walks of life: teachers, engineers, doctors, and Air Force pilots. Now, I know you'd agree with me that the second piece, the second write-up is much more interesting than the first one, which just gives me simple sentences. So use a variety of sentence types to make your essay much more interesting. And then spelling. A lot of times, many people use different types of English when they are writing. You see somebody writing with British spelling in the first paragraph and then switching to the American form of spelling in the second paragraph. Now, you should use only one type of spelling because judges usually look out for this thing. If you are writing with British English, use British English to the end. If you are writing with American English, you use American English to the end because using different types of English while you are spelling makes it confusing. So if you are using British English, use it all through, and the same thing for American English. Most times I use British English because that's what is mostly obtainable here. And use a dictionary when you are not certain. Yeah, there's really no point writing a word and misspelling it when you could just check up the dictionary and save yourself all the trouble. And also, when you do not know the meaning of a word, you are not sure of the meaning of a word, please endeavor to use the dictionary because I've seen some essays where some people just use some words and then I begin to wonder, like, how exactly did this person think this word was going to fit into this presentation or into this essay that has been written. So please, when you are not certain of the meaning of a word, please use a dictionary. And then there are some applications that can be very useful to you. Grammarly, Google Docs, even the more recent versions of Microsoft Word can also help you better in detecting wrong spellings, punctuation mistakes, and other grammatical blunders. Okay, the next one we'll be talking about is punctuation. Now, something many people don't realize is that mechanical accuracy is a very important part of essay grading, and it's one of the easiest places to lose marks or to gain as many marks as possible. So, for instance, let's say we have an essay organized such that 15 marks, or let's say 20 marks, go to mechanical accuracy. And the modus operandi is usually that we deduct 0.5 marks for each mistake. So it simply means that if you make 30 mistakes, you lose all 15 marks. So it's also very simple. If you do not make any grammar, any punctuation mistake or any mechanical accuracy blunder, you simply get all your marks. So it's more like free marks for you. So ensure you capitalize your words properly. You use punctuation marks where necessary. Some mistakes should be avoided. For instance, some people place full stops at the end of topics of the essay. That's a mistake that should be avoided. There are very simple errors that you should avoid. And when you're writing essays are usually formal pieces. So you should avoid using abbreviations like don't, can't. You should write all these things in full. Also, when you read books, try to read books that will improve your ability to punctuate sentences correctly. Because the truth is that punctuating sentences is something that you learn, that you're able to do because you know the rules, right? So knowing the rules is what makes you able to punctuate your sentences correctly. And we cannot teach all the rules in this session today. So make sure that you go online, get books. I would recommend a book at the end of this session, books that will help you improve your punctuation, and it will make your essay pieces much better. And finally, under proofreading, I'd like to talk about formatting and instructions. Now, it is very sad that a lot of times, a lot of individuals write the essays and do not pay attention to instructions. Now, it is very important that you pay attention and obey all instructions because when essay organizers receive a large number of entries, what they first of all do is that, okay, they look at the entries. Who are those that adhere to instructions? Who are those that did not adhere to instructions? And just based on that alone, they take out a very large number of entries. So sometimes as many as 50% of the entries that are received may be rejected. And it's going to be very, very sad for you to write an essay and then you write your essay, you waste your time, and then it's rejected simply because you do not obey simple instructions. Instructions like font size and font type. Most essays will require you to use Times New Roman, font size 12. Other essays might require you to use Cambria, whatever they ask you to do. Please make sure you do it correctly. Then the spacing too. Did they ask you to put in a title page? Please include it because not obeying instructions simply means that you are giving yourself a higher risk of submitting a piece that will not even be graded. So please, all these things that would prevent your piece from being graded, you should avoid them as much as possible. So that's really about proofreading. So proofreading is just making sure you use good grammar, you use correct spellings, punctuate your sentences correctly, make sure you use good formatting, correct formatting that is specified by the instructions given in the essay flyer. And something that is very important is that when you don't read the instructions in the essay flyer, for instance, when there's an essay flyer, some of the things that are written there are the eligibility requirements, right? So let's say, for instance, they say those are eligible for this essay are law students, and you did not see it, and you started writing the essay already, and then you're about to submit, and you now see it, you have wasted your time. Or perhaps they ask you for a particular document that you're supposed to include as a means of identification, and then you submit the essay without including that means of identification. Now, some essay organizers may pardon you and send you an email for you to resend your identification document. But others may just ignore it and say, oh, the instruction was quite clear, but you did not follow it. So please, as much as possible, follow instructions. It is very, very important. So that's about proofreading. So now I'll go to editing. And I must really commend the job that Oyin did with regards to content, because she spoke a lot of important things that are very, very important for you to write an essay that is very good. You need to write strategically, make sure that you address the topic. Because I noticed that a lot of times when people write essays, right, they write essays that do not address the topic. So when you are editing a piece, the first thing that you must ensure is that, okay, what I'm writing, does it even speak to the topic at all? Because if your essay does not do justice to the topic, then it's not a good essay. And what's really the point of writing an essay that is not good? So when you write something, you make sure you write it very well. So good research is non-negotiable. So when you are editing a piece, the first thing that comes to your mind is, okay, this essay I'm trying to edit, what is in the text? Does it actually speak to the topic? And don't hesitate to remove, to rephrase things, to cut, to rearrange, and refine various aspects of your essay, because the aim is to present the best version of your piece, right? And doing that, you would have written so many introductions. Sometimes in some essays I write like 5 introductions before I finally pick one. So sometimes you might have written something that will be further down in the piece, and then you realize, oh, this thing should actually come closer to the introduction. So all these things, you must be ready to do them. You shouldn't hesitate to do them. And every writer has a unique way of writing, and this unique way of writing usually goes from a mixture of what you read and how you think. But nonetheless, even though you have your unique way of writing, you must make sure that this unique way of writing still communicates very effectively to your audience, because you are not writing for yourself, you are writing for your audience, and your audience must be able to make sense of whatever you have written, else your piece is not good enough. And so when you are checking the content and structure, you must check for inconsistencies, you must check for logical fallacies, you must check for disjointed and disconnected paragraphs. So I have an example I would like to show. Let's say, for instance, you've written an essay on insecurity, and then you realize that your paragraph 3 shows that you discussed poor socioeconomic indices as a cause of insecurity. Then the 4th paragraph discusses porous borders as a cause of insecurity, and then you give solutions in the same paragraph. And then paragraph 5 now comes to discuss solutions to socioeconomic problems, which are a cause of insecurity. Now, if you look carefully at this, what happens is that in one paragraph, you discuss the problem without the solution. In the second paragraph, you discussed the problem and the solution. So now, there are 2 problems there. Number 1, it is inconsistent, right? Because we did not use the same writing technique for different paragraphs. And number 2, it is going to be much harder to connect paragraph 4 and paragraph 5 because they are not related. So a better way to approach the topic is simply to discuss the problems, socioeconomic problems and the porous borders in separate paragraphs 3 and 4, and then you now discuss the solutions to them in different paragraphs 5 and 6. Or you can decide that you want to discuss a problem and the relevant solution in one paragraph, and then you do social economic problems and their solutions in paragraph 3, and the porous borders and the solutions to them in paragraph 4. So when you are reading your essay, most times you discover that, okay, some things have been mixed up. And that's why I would also like to reiterate what Oyin said, that before you write, you must have an idea of what your piece is going to look like. You must have a logical structure already in mind, because it prevents you from making all these kinds of mistakes that you'd see when you are editing your piece. So look out for inconsistencies, look out for fallacies, look out for disconnections. All right. Now, another thing I also like to reiterate is avoid fancy words. Use simple words that a reader can easily flow with. You see a lot of people, they want to use jargons. Now, there's a place for complex word in essays, yes, but they should be the exception. They are not the norm, right? You should only use a complex word when there is no better word to convey your intention. So when you can use, why should you use utilize? When you can use confuse, why should you use discombobulate? So it's just making things hard for yourself and making things hard for whoever is reading it. And the thing about essays is that when you use too many fancy words, you are increasing the risk of whoever is reading it tuning out, right? Because most people have limited vocabulary, right? And using excessive fancy words makes it difficult to follow your line of thought. So please avoid using fancy words as much as possible. Now, economize words. Now, I've noticed that a lot of people in a bit to write essays try to use very long sentences, thinking it's like a measure of how intelligently you can write and stuff. So no, please avoid wordiness. A good sentence is a concise sentence, a sentence where you use as few words as possible. You should avoid wordiness and unnecessarily long sentences. Be concise. Avoid jargons that your audience cannot understand so they can easily follow your line of thought. Now, let's look at this example. Somebody writes, there's currently a lively ongoing controversy among many sociologists and other professionals who study human nature. Theories are being spun and arguments are being conducted among them about what it means that so many young people and other older people, for that matter, who live in our society today are so very interested in stories about zombies. Now, I'm very sure I've lost you already. There's no point. I'm sure I must have lost you at one point around nature. Now, if let's read the second one, it says, a lively societal debate rages among the human sciences. The contentious issue is, why are so many people fascinated by zombie fiction? Now, I, for one, would prefer to read the second example than to read the first, because this one goes straight to the point. It makes me understand that, okay, what we are talking about now is there's a debate, and the debate is, okay, why are people so much fascinated by zombies? So please economize words. Don't use unnecessarily long sentences. Don't make your sentences long and winding such that a person has to think and try to join so many things together before they can follow your line of thought. It is not applicable when you're writing essays. It's bad. Try to avoid it. All right. So omit needless words. Again, it's very similar to what we had before. The question as to whether, you can just say whether, or the question whether. A story is a strange one. A story is strange. It is used for fuel purposes. It is used for fuel during the period of time. That's a lot of tautology. You have period of time during. So just use during and you solved the problem. The sentence is concise. You pass your message across and it's easy for everybody. So omit needless words. Economize. And then redundant expressions. Let's look at these examples. I think examples are usually much better than talking theory. Now look at this. It says she opened the envelope which contained a confidential document inside. So we have contained and inside. Both of them are talking about the same thing. After reading with close scrutiny, we scrutinize something by looking at it closely. So that's a redundant expression too. She discovered this was written in the exact same handwriting as the mysterious note she had received before, exact and same. The reason she knew this was because of her handwriting studies in her past history. So now, some of the redundant words are side by side, others are different points in the sentence. So if we read the second one that says, she opened the envelope which contained the confidential document. After reading it with scrutiny, she discovered it was written in the same handwriting as the mysterious note she had received before. She knew this because of the handwriting studies in her past. Now, this makes a lot of sense. And you've removed the redundant expressions that the words that are saying the same thing. You know, a lot of essays require you to write a lot of things in 1,500 words. So you are trying to make sure that, okay, I am passing my message across as concisely as possible, using as few words as possible. And you do that by eliminating redundant expressions. So economize words, omit needless words, and take out needless redundant expressions. Now, also avoid using passive voice. Now, a lot of people like to write using the passive voice, and it's kind of makes your writing look kind of indirect, right? And when you write with the active voice, it's more direct and vigorous than the passive voice. And just like I think one of the facilitators, I'm not sure if it's Pastor David that said so, that you should try to make sure that you write the way you talk, right? So it makes your reader able to connect to whatever you're saying. So my first visit to Boston will always be remembered by me. When I can simply say, I shall always remember my first visit to Boston, it's more direct. The person sees what I'm saying and picks it much easily. Also, the second example, we have a passive tense and the other one is an active tense. So using an active tense makes it easier to convey a direct message to the audience. So as much as possible, avoid using the passive voice in your essays. Use active voice as much as you can because it's more direct and it is much better to use. And also your tone. your tone is very important. Now, when you write an essay, you always want to, sometimes you might write on a topic that you would like to stir emotion, you would like to evoke a particular response in your judges. Now, I think something that people need to understand is that judges are looking out for what they can connect to, right? That was why when he was talking about strategic writing, thinking of what other people would not think of, because these judges will see hundreds of pieces, right? And they will see the same thing in all these pieces written in different ways. But when you sit back and you think of something different, is what it stands out to them, and they can easily, okay, this person is saying something, and I can easily pick it, and then they kind of grade your piece much better than others. So when you are discussing, and for instance, you're telling a story, you should use a tone. You should write in such a way that the reader can identify with your tone. Okay, so is your tone reflecting the mood that you would like to convey to the audience? I will have a very long writing here, but you can kind of go through it. Now, if anybody reads this piece, this paragraph evokes a kind of feeling of nostalgia, like the feeling of the good old days, and it will resonate deeply with those who were alive then. Even we that were not present then, we kind of have a kind of imagination of what it could have been. So if you want to give a call to action, state it assertively, go directly, make sure that the words you are using are conveying the tone you would like the reader to read what you have written in. And then use subheadings, please. Appropriate subheadings make it easier to structure your essay. It also makes it easier for the readers to have a clear overview of what you are discussing. So if I see your essay, I see the subheadings, okay, I know that, okay, this is what this person talking about here, progresses to this, and then concludes here. It's much easier and makes your work much more interesting to read, because person will know that, okay, I'm flowing from this line of thought to the other line of thought, and so on and so forth. So use subheadings, appropriate subheadings. It's very, very important. And also plagiarism. Now, plagiarism is a bone of contention for a lot of writers, because a lot of people just copy stuff verbatim and just put it in their essays, and then many at times people get disqualified for plagiarizing sources. So my one thing to do is you make sure that when you use direct quotes, like Patrick has said, please make sure you reference them appropriately. Reference whatever sites you've used appropriately. And then number two, there are some online resources that help you to find out what part of your essay contains plagiarized material. So now the one I would really recommend is the smallsealtools.com. That one kind of gives you a report of where the plagiarism is present in your piece. Now, Grammarly will only give you will only tell you how much plagiarism is in your piece, but would not point out those places, except you are using a premium version, which is very expensive. You know, we all live in Nigeria, so these things are very expensive. But using the small seal tools kind of gives you direct access to where those plagiarism occur. And then you can kind of rephrase those sentences to make sure that, okay, this thing is not exactly the way it was stated. Because if you are quoting, that's one thing. If you are reporting a statement, it's another thing. And as much as possible, you like to avoid using exactly the same words when you are not quoting. Because I think plagiarism is defined as using 7 words verbatim from a piece. So there are different ways you can rephrase words that sentences or phrases that would make them not flagged down, that will prevent them from being flagged down by this plagiarism software. So please avoid plagiarism as much as possible. Don't just go to a website, copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste, and then you just present it. Once they run that stuff through a software, it's going to show that you have copied directly from websites. And also, I think this should be the final part of our discussion. Self-editing versus editing done by others. Now, a lot of people usually wonder, which one is better? Do I edit myself, or do I ask someone else to edit? Now, truth is that as an essay writer, you should be able to edit your own piece. Now, there are problems that come with that, definitely. And at the same time, you should also be ready to give your piece out to others to go through for you. Now, oftentimes, when you read your piece, you do so with some kind of preconceived notions. So it's kind of easy to overlook mistakes and problems with your expressions and grammar. Why? Because you're reading it as the writer. And then when you are reading some things, you are making some assumptions of knowledge. And the person that is reading your piece does not have those same assumptions of knowledge that you have while you are reading that piece. So those become blind spots that you have in your writing. So please, when you are reading, The solution is to make sure that you read from a reader's perspective. You imagine that, okay, I have not seen this piece before, right? I am a reader. I don't know this material. I want to make sense of it. So this way, you are now in a position of a reader, not the position of a writer, and you can easily spot those mistakes and inconsistencies in your work. And you can also try reading your work out loud, because reading it out loud kind of makes you say, this thing that I've read out loud doesn't really make sense. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't really make sense. So yeah, reading your work out loud makes it easier for you to pick out fallacies and inconsistencies or mistakes in your work. And then very importantly, ask someone else to read your piece, right? Because this gives you a second opinion on your essay. It gives you a unique perspective, because that person is not you, and the person is reading your essay without any preconceived notions, and the person can give you feedback on what he or she understands from the essay. So, and I would also advise that you kind of find someone that is, you find someone that is writing the essay, writing essays that you are. So that will give you better, what I call it, it will give you a better response. Like, give you a better essay to someone that is much better at writing essays than you are. So I conclude by saying that reading while editing is an art. So it's, you have to make sure you know the rules, you have to make surely, and then better editing comes with when you keep editing pieces, you get better at it. And I would like to recommend this book, Elements by William Stone. So it's a very, very. I think I would send it to the page so that you can have access to it. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you very much. Everybody, I don't know if you all felt like you are actually listening to an and thank you for sharing for us to actually share from your weight of experience and the knowledge that you gained over the years. I believe that we would be able to craft better essays and editing, proofreading would be a lot better. So I will just take some of the questions that we have. Please, if you have questions, kindly drop your questions in the chat box. And like I said earlier, if I have dropped the link, if you've not filled the link, kindly go and fill the link, because it's only those people that actually fill the link that will get access to it. And we just want to have a kind of feedback from you. Some people have, I think about 55 people have filled the form, and I know that over 100 people participated in this training. So the questions, Fashino Inulu is asking, please, can you type the plagiarism check software you talked about? I think someone already did that in the chat box. Then Deborah Odimayo is asking, I did not get the other option you gave in the place of Grammarly. I think you dropped that. Then I think I don't know if there is any other question, please. Like 1 minute, if you have any other question, kindly drop it in the box. Would we be able to access your slide? Okay, thank you very much. We said we'll be able to access the slide. I believe that with that, we've come to the end of this training. I want to appreciate everybody for joining. I've read some of the comments. Some people said this training would have been better as a physical training. Some said the time allocated to the speakers was short, and that was actually why I allowed you to run this focus. So we've seen your responses. We appreciate it, and we'll obviously factor it into any other things that we are planning. Thank you very much, everybody. And I would like to say that from now we will work on getting you on board for our last system of opportunities. There are a number of essays that are actually going on. and we'll be sharing some of those essays on the group. So the most important thing, like Adit will have mentioned, is that you practice. You don't wait till maybe when you become an expert before you start writing. The only way you can actually learn is by practicing whatever it is that you've learned. I think Iniolua, someone would like to speak. Let me just, Fashino Iniolua is raising his hand. Let me just allow him to speak before we end this session. Iniolua, you can speak. Fashino Iniolua.
Ask a question in the chat box about subheading.
And the question has not been answered. I will check now. And like I was saying before, this session is being recorded. We'll be sending the recorded, we'll be uploading the recording to a Google Drive, and some of the materials, the presentation slide are sent to us. We will make it available on the dedicated drive. And aside that, we will also make the essays. Oyindamola promised to send some of our essays, so we make it available on the drive. So you can always access this drive to check these various resources. Fashino Iniolua, I will take this question from Fashino Iniolua. He said, I didn't quite understand the part of using subheadings. Can you please give an example? I think it needs.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Did you get the question?
Sorry, can you read the question again?
Okay, I would. He said, I didn't quite understand the part of using subheadings. Can you please give an example?
Oh, all right. Yeah, so about using subheadings, let's say, for instance, you were asked to discuss how to, for instance, solve the problems of insecurity or let's say corruption in Nigeria, right? So your subheadings will simply be headings of different aspects of your essay. So let's say you want to talk about first your introduction as a subheading. Then you want to describe the problem of corruption. So you can decide to say, okay, Beauty and the Beast, corruption in Nigeria. And then under that subheading, you discuss the problem of corruption in Nigeria, how much that's eating into Nigeria, the consequences. Then the next subheading could be solving the problem of corruption in Nigeria. So it simply means that in that particular part of the essay, you want to discuss how to solve the problems. And the final subheading could be your conclusion. So it's not really something complex. It's just like you're trying to have, how will I put it? They're just subheadings for different parts of the essay that will make it easier to identify what you're going to talk about in this part of your essay. So that's how to use subheadings. Thank you. I hope I've answered the question.
Okay. So thank you everybody for joining the call. Every other communication will be done via the WhatsApp group. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the night.